All right, we are now live. Welcome to the Lost Cryptids Conservatory's live show. My guest today is Stephen Streufert, and well-known guy. He's the owner of the Bigfoot bookstore, and he's part of the Bluff Creek Project. And so, Stephen, what got you started in the world of Bigfoot?
Well, like most people my age, we watched In Search of on television with Leonard Nimoy, shows like that. That's where I first saw the Patterson film and so forth. In a drive-in movie theater, saw it on the big screen. So when I was a kid, that was a very interesting topic among many others that I was curious about, aliens and everything else, So I was reading science fiction a lot all that time during my youth, and it kind of just fit in with that. So, when I moved to Mount Shasta for a while, I got interested then in the UFO thing and all the kind of bizarre mythology that goes around the mountain and the Lemurians and so forth and so on.
Yeah, the people of the mountain and stuff. Yeah, fascinating stuff.
Yeah. So I have a tendency, I guess, to explore the local history of places where I live. And also I kind of gravitate towards the places that are interesting, right? So when I moved to Humboldt County, in the back of my mind, there was always this Bigfoot thing that I recalled from when I was a little kid. And when I graduated from college, I was here and I had to decide, what I'm going to do. I decided to become an independent bookseller. And so I didn't leave Humboldt County. I just stayed here and got more and more deep into it. And when we would come out here to Willow Creek, we would see that Bigfoot statue along the highway there, which was carved in 1967 by Jim McLaren, right before the Patterson film was shot. And that always intrigued me. That's the same statue that I remember seeing on television, right?
Yep.
So
very famous.
I eventually started investigating the local history, right? So I encountered old timers like Al Hodgson, who was in his 80s when I met him, and he was still alive, which really stunned me. This stuff from my childhood is still ongoing. It's still here. The old timers are here still. And there were a lot of local stories. I just started gobbling them up, whoever would tell me about Bigfoot. And among those, they were current day sightings too, So that intrigued me even more, that it wasn't just a dead phenomenon, but it was something that kept on going every year. There's something that gets reported.
Right. It's very active, and especially in that area.
Yeah. Well, yeah, not only do we have the legend of it, but also it's just an endless forest around here. So there's plenty of places to go out there and experience odd things in the woods, or, well, frankly, just right along the highway here. Highway 299 is a little 2-lane thing. It might be considered a backcountry road in most places in the country, but a good number of the sightings that get reported are just along the road. Something comes out from one side and walks across the road in the classic way.
Right.
And people get a good glimpse of it for a few seconds and then it's gone. But usually that's a good enough few seconds that it's exposed right there in front of you, either in the daytime or in your headlights. Right outside my door here, there was a sighting across the street there at the river, and back behind me there was another sighting over here by the cabins. Those are in recent times, not ancient history.
Right.
Well, so that's how I got into it, just living here. All right. And before I knew it, I had this bookstore open because we had too many books in our house, and a young toddler running around, with 6-foot piles of books. It's not very safe. And so
Right.
I
Yeah.
opened this store, and the next thing I knew, I had Bigfoot researchers coming in here. Like I'd poke my head out in the front door and toss some books out on the sale rack, and I'd look over, and there's some guy that was standing there looking really familiar, and there he is, Matt Moneymaker, from
Oh
the
yeah.
BFRO. I'm like, don't I know you somehow? But that really drew me in. People like Bobo, who lives here in Humboldt County, and Cliff Barrickman, and the whole California crew guys, Tom Yamarone, and the Robert Leiterman. He's another local here. So we kind of had a group of friends, around 2007. We had the 40th anniversary celebration for the Patterson film.
Yep.
And we all went up to Bluff Creek, and that was my first real time with Bigfooters up there. I'd been there before, kind of looking around, trying to find the film site, hopelessly lost, on old logging roads and stuff. But in 2007, I met all of them, Tom Powell, who are major figures in the world of Bigfooting today, so like right away, I just sort of stepped right in the middle of it. And there I was in the heart of Bluff Creek, where all the major expeditions had been organized, and famous people from Renee Hinden and Bob Titmus and John Green, all the way through, Patterson and Gimlin and Jerry Crew and the whole lot of them. They were all there.
Yeah.
So, I was intrigued at that point. You're sitting in the woods, it's dark, and you hear all these weird little sounds, and this history is just bubbling up from the earth right there,
Exactly.
And
you're right there,
it's
literally.
Yeah, you get enchanted by it, and it's very, it's hard to shake the idea of Bigfoot when you're surrounded by it to that extent.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
So, how about when you were out in the field? Have you had any encounters that you were definite that this is a Bigfoot, having Bigfoot activity? That aha moment?
No.
No?
Like we were saying yesterday, I have had a few experiences of what I might call a maybe, but I have very high standards for what constitutes a Bigfoot encounter. For me, it's not an acorn falling on my roof, which happens all the time. I live in the woods, so I don't need to go field researching. My front yard is a forest, and it goes on for miles in all directions around us. If you just look at Willow Creek, it's a tiny sliver of human habitation amongst a vast ocean of trees.
Yes.
So right there in my front yard is where the most interesting things have occurred. Like going up to Bluff Creek is great, and going camping is great, and I've had weird experiences out there too. But usually, when you investigate and you get to know the surroundings, the wildlife, the botany, and the other factors, you can find ordinary explanations for these things.
Yeah, most of the time.
Acorns, and bear tracks, human tracks, other animals, like foxes and coyotes and bobcats and mountain lions. They all make some pretty outrageous noises, and they will stalk around your campground wondering if there's food there for them. And if the circumstances are right, it might seem like it's a Bigfoot. And when the human mind, like I was saying before, gets so enchanted by these things, you're very inclined to project your anticipation upon the phenomena around you. I mean, not you, anybody, any human being is. I'm not saying that Bigfoot witnesses are crazy or anything. We are all built that way from our evolutionary past, right? To anticipate predators and dangers in the woods, because that's where we came from.
Yes.
We lived in the woods.
That's right.
And if you combine that with the fact that most people these days don't live in the woods, you got a real problem. You have a natural, instinctual background that is inclined to perceive a danger in everything, like a lion in the grass. It could be the wind, right? This is the classic model. But so if you just sit there and you think like, oh, I'm a skeptic, that's just the wind in the grass. And then it turns out that one time to be a lion in the grass, then you're toast, you're dinner for the lion, and you don't get to go on and procreate and spread your genes. So that instinctual fear is built into us. And the city boy going out in the woods is going to freak if they don't have experience. I'm used to it because I live out here. It's no big macho thing or anything, but like I'm used to the animals and the noises of the woods and stuff. So I don't freak out by it. I've learned about it too over the years. So go ahead.
That's right. I think inexperienced people can set themselves up to feel sensations that are normal, but nothing's going on. It's just them. And you should get adequated to the woods and your surrounding areas that you research, so you tell the difference between animals and stuff. I mean, I've jumped hundreds of deer at night and stuff, so I know what it kind of sounds like. And I've also heard things that were not deer. And so you should everyone should study up and see, experience with the animals around you, because that's the only way you're going to determine what's going on.
But
so
I think everybody can take advantage of Occam's razor, and that's the idea that the simplest explanation is likely to be true. That the explanation that doesn't call on supernatural, extraordinary, bizarre, mystical, or magical other elements. So if it sounds like an owl, it sounds like an acorn. No matter how loud it was or whatever on your roof, go up and look. And I've done that, and I don't find any rocks on my roof. I find pine cones and acorns and sticks and leaves. If it's an owl, it sounds like an owl. It probably is an owl. I don't know how people get Bigfoot imitating an owl sound. They sound large, and it must be Bigfoot because it's so loud. But that's a subjective perception,
right? It is subjective. I guess the only experience I have is I have heard what I thought was mimicking an owl, and it was trying to mimic the barn owl. It does the famous barn owl, cuckoo hoo 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 hoo. It does the famous sequence. Yeah. Well, this thing would only do the first little bit. It would never finish the whole sequence, and I thought it was something else. It didn't sound right, and
well, maybe you can always say it was maybe so,
right? And I chalk it up as a maybe, and I've had more profound experiences. But let's get into some of your maybes. What kind of things kind of had you up in the air about what was going on?
Okay, well, I mean, just weird moments, right? Like here I was in 1999. I wasn't even really getting into Bigfoot yet then. I was sort of vaguely reading a book when I saw one. I'd pick it up and read a few pages about Bigfoot. And my friends and I, we became a little more enthusiastic about it. We started this thing called the Church of Bigfoot Scientists. And it was sort of a tongue-in-cheek enthusiasm thing. And one day these guys, we were hiking back in the woods behind where I lived in this little cabin with a girlfriend of mine at the time. And it was a pretty much almost off the grid kind of ramshackle little woodsy cabin in the redwoods. And we hiked up, the place was surrounded by like 350 acres of redwood forest. And then beyond that, you'd cross over on these old family trails into the logging company land. And those people had come and cut down the trees for the most part in the 1800s, turn of the century, and then come back in the cut some second growth out, and then they just left it behind. So it was this crazy, thick, regrowing forest. And we were up back in there for several miles when the two dogs we had along with us, which were mountain dogs, very familiar with the environment, not prone to barking at everything, freaked out, like really freaked out. We heard this snap down in the brush, and the dogs had a distinctive response to any animal. Like if it were a deer, you'd pretty much know, right? If it were a bear, they'd bark in a certain way. And they were acting in a way that I'd never seen them before. And this includes being around elk and stuff like that, which we have in good numbers around here.
Right, because they're always smelling the environment, so they would be familiar with those animals.
Yeah, and there's signaling. I mean, it's their instinctive, non-linguistic communication, telling us, their pack members, that there's something weird down there. And so when they freaked like that and they bolted down the hill, we all kind of took a step back and said, what the heck? And you could tell there was something heavy moving in the brush, but it was down behind all these second growth tan oaks and stuff that were pretty much obscuring whatever was back there, but you could hear that it was big. So, I mean, I think it would have to have been a large animal like a bear or an elk, right? But I saw something moving up above the small bushes and shrubs and young trees. It was tall, and there was like a head, just kind of like that moving forward, a brownish colored head. But it was like a split second thing that I saw. I couldn't tell you, all I registered was a brown form moving. It could have been an elk. It was not dark brown. It was pale brown, but I really don't know. I to this day, I couldn't tell you because it was something big moving down the hill. And once I saw that, I didn't see it again. No matter how much we looked, couldn't see the thing. And the dogs just kept going down the hill after it. The dogs are going to get murdered.
Right.
And my girlfriend will kill me for getting her dogs killed. But, luckily that didn't happen. And that is just one of those things that kind of was spooky and weird. And most people would say, yeah, that was a Bigfoot encounter. Just like the thing that happened in my yard years later, had something come down the hill, and when it was making these falls, the ground was vibrating. I don't know how a bear could do that with a low center of gravity like it has, but I brought Moneymaker and Bobo and Cliff all up to my house. I told them the story, and they're all looking at me like, "That's a squatch." A squatch.
That's so Bobo.
I know. I'm like, actually, that was Moneymaker. Moneymaker sounds just like Bobo if you give him a chance, but really, like, I don't know what it was because I didn't see it.
Right.
Even though I found tracks, they were like oval shaped depressions in the plants on the ground, which were still fresh in June. So that what else made a track like that? I don't know. It wasn't me, and they weren't there when I dumped out the compost a few days before that. Maybe it was a 500-pound man coming down the hill, in the middle of the dark night.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah.
I mean, I'm very, very close to thinking, yeah, that was a Bigfoot encounter. But being a skeptical person that I am, I can't do that, even though it would be great to go around and be one of the club members, like,
yeah.
I'm a knower now. I'm so much more special than you, right?
Well, I think that's respectful because you're keeping yourself at a level that of such high standards that when you do get the evidence that you agree with, it's going to be good. It's going to be really.
Yeah, I try. People like to think, because I run this skeptical, critical thinking group on Facebook, that we're meanies. We're like, well, you're just trolling the witnesses and you're, ridiculing people and stuff. That's not what we're doing. I hold myself to the standards that I hold anybody to, much more strictly, in fact. Like, and I think anybody should be as hard on themselves as they can be without being a total jerk to oneself, right? You have to question your own perceptions. Otherwise, you're a fanatic or you're a fool, because human perception is notoriously subjective and unreliable. And human thought is limited. Human conception of the universe, our experience of it, no matter how broad we draw the lines, it's limited. No matter how much we see with science, we're a biological organism that's designed to function in a certain way, which is like, where's the food? Where's the danger? Where's my mate? Where's my family so I can fight a war? It's the other bad group over there. And like, that's pretty much what our species is, on a fundamental basic level. We evolved from that. And, now we're like all modern and on the internet and living in cities and going to other
we're out of touch
planets
with nature.
So we're way out there. And Bigfooting, I think, it kind of represents like a way to come back to Earth, get yourself right down there in the woods and use your primary primal brain as well as your intellect. So that's cool too. You don't want to let it get out of control, right?
Right, because you can.
Too weird.
Like I tell people, when we go out and we try to look at stick structures, which it's very hard to explain, and you can't chalk it up to Bigfoot because no one's seen it happen. But we found some structures. I found stick structures that when you look at the detail, like the one was a pine tree branch in the middle of a structure of oak and maple trees, and there's no pine trees for 250 yards plus. How do you explain? How do you explain that one single tree branch get into that area? Deer aren't going to carry that. A human could do it, but for my instance, no one knew I was going to be in that spot doing that. So I don't
humans do a lot of strange things, and we always like to say in our group, like, if you're there looking at this thing, then you can't really say that humans never go there, right?
Right, because you're there. And if you can get there, someone else in there, and someone else has probably been there.
Like on this TV show, the Expedition Bigfoot, like I'm looking at the picture right now. Like, it's just so goofy. They find a little survival hut made out of branches that have been cut recently. I mean, what are the odds that it's a Sasquatch hut when that people are prone to make these things themselves? Humans do them all over the place,
right?
Just for fun, if not survival, for fun. And I'm sure all of us did when we were kids. We made arts and stuff.
I know I did. Yeah.
I mean, I lived like a Squatch when I was a kid, out in the woods, throwing rocks at people and having little stick wars and building forts.
Yeah.
So turns out that TV show was shot on a ranch. It's a dude ranch, with the like old mining remains and old cattle ranching signs. And I guess they, people can pay to recreate out there. So, I mean, somebody, probably, if it wasn't totally faked by the TV show, some other human must have just come by there and made a little stick hut. So, like, I don't know, like sometimes you see
the place. I mean,
you see pictures though, like of weird shapes, right?
Yeah, like
so
I got some stuff. Well, in that instance of the survival structure, which is what it looked like, there was a dead hawk by it. But with that TV crew and stuff, it's kind of hard to say because it's already been known with Finding Bigfoot that the first season or a couple episodes at least, they were trying to fake things, or not fake, but fib a bit, and so who knows, that might be going on. it seems like at least that this show was more for beginners or novice people. I think a lot of the people have been doing it for a long time were disappointed in how childish, I guess it was. But
if you investigate under the surface of things, you see the truth. And the truth is, it was dramatized. It was
right.
like almost pretty much just a reenactment of Bigfoot hunting. If they had just had a little thing at the beginning, some elements of this show are fictional, then I wouldn't feel so, intellectually insulted by this.
For me, my personal issue, my personal issue was when that guy got infrasound zapped or whatever. He got off the show. It was the first episode. He never got back on. I mean that.
Yeah, poor RPG.
You needed, if you guys wanted to sell it, or if it did happen, you got to explain it a bit more. That guy should have came back on and really talked.
Well, they want to have the mystery.
Did you think
they don't want to explain things?
Exactly. Yeah, there's that mystery element. Do you think they had any sort of good evidence? Anything that caught your eye? You thought that was interesting?
No, not a single thing. And I know that it was fake. Their map, the aerial map they show, it's fake. All those 10-mile hikes they were taking, completely confabulated. They were in a dude ranch. They probably were sleeping in cabins like Bryce is shown in this little woodsy cabin. You can see pictures of that on the internet. It's right there. So maybe they did a little trip out into the woods, but obviously they had trucks and all-terrain vehicles and stuff.
They did have the all-terrain vehicles. Yep.
I think, if you look at it, their track was probably just a scuff in the ground made by, they said there were like elk and deer tracks all around. Well, those critters, they dig around in the dirt. If you get enough of them going over, there wasn't a Bigfoot track. I mean, it was the most vague and ridiculous track, but yet, they showed Jeff Meldrum kind of nodding his head. Well, it could be good. I mean, what Meldrum was really thinking in the back of his mind is that's a piece of junk, worthless, and probably not even related to Bigfoot. But, he doesn't want to say that on the television show. The same thing with that, the sound that they heard. They did a call blasting thing, and they got a response, which was obviously from a canine animal. It sounded like a dog or a coyote. And a wildlife biologist or whatever Maria Mayor is, she has a PhD. She's smarter than that. She's not going to hear a common animal like a canine,
you would think,
and really seriously think that it's Bigfoot. I mean, common sense, when you hear that sound, if you listen to it, it sounds like a dog. And it almost certainly was. But, for the purposes of TV, they just act as if it's something mysterious. And I could say on and on through the whole show was an endless series of goofy things like that. I mean, to the point where they're claiming ghost children and, cattle mutilations from aliens dropping skulls in the lake. Man, yeah, I don't know.
It seemed like it touched like every little bit of Bigfoot community that's out there. A bit of woo, a bit of this, a bit of that. What did you think about, I guess, the drone inside the cave, the mine shaft or whatever? What did you think about that?
Well, that's exactly what it was, an old cinnabar mine.
Right.
They acted like it's super toxic and stuff, but actually,
that was TV show magic. That whole scene, and that was kind of ridiculous. That right there, I think is just. It turns out the people who've been doing this for a while wanted a real expedition on TV. That is so disappointing.
I know. Yeah. Well, it's too bad because, I mean, that's what we always told the guys in Finding Bigfoot they should do, and they did try to do it. They would go to the local BFRO members who are all on the ground, mostly very sensible, down-to-earth local people who are very serious about looking into the Bigfoot phenomenon. And then they would go out where the people in the, BFRO groups said there was action, or they would have these town hall meetings, and those were real people in the audience. They're these not actors like in this stupid expedition show. Every single one of those witnesses seemed to me to be totally fake and I've never heard of their sighting reports at all. I don't know who they were. They probably just got actors, who think that there's grizzly bears in Oregon and stupid things like that. And anybody who lives in Oregon knows there's no grizzly bears there. I mean, there probably will be soon, but not yet. But Finding Bigfoot tried much more seriously to depict the real activities of Bigfoot researchers. I mean, obviously they want to make fun of it a little just because it's more entertaining if they say goofy things and fall off the porch and stuff, right? Like, I've been out in the woods with those people like Bobo and Cliff, especially. And that's what they do in real life. That's what they were doing in real life before this TV show. In the 1980s and 90s is when those guys got started.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying like they're the elite, but I am saying that this last show was very disappointing just because of the way it depicts the Bigfoot researcher community as being either fake or stupid.
Yeah, and it didn't set us up that good, especially that one ghost episode or whatever. I don't know.
Well, I mean, all we can do is carry on because people have always made fun of Bigfoot. People look at you funny, even if you're a skeptic. Like, I get that all the time. Like, you don't actually believe in that thing, do you? Well, I don't know. I approach it agnostically. Then they look at you funny, like, you actually think about that? Like, you think it actually would be real? I don't know. I'm just exploring the idea of it. And they, they get kind of unnerved by it. Like, I mean, I've seen people actually kind of get freaked out by Bobo because Bobo is so serious,
Yeah, I've been in that situation myself, and they give you the look like it does not compute in their hardware system, and I try to explain to them, and their eyes kind of get wide, and I think they leave with a open mind, but.
Yeah, well, all you can do is sort of try to have a rational point of view and try to explain the curiosity and the fact that, it's an ongoing phenomenon that's culturally and psychologically and, mythically consistent, but it has never been obviously proven to be false.
That's the one thing.
Maybe you can say Bigfoot is highly unlikely to exist, right? If you're a scientist, like someone like Jeff Meldrum, that's what they have to kind of officially say. But I mean, like, he's 96 or 99% convinced that it's real now. So I don't know what to say. It doesn't really matter, though, as long as you don't tell them that Bigfoot came from outer space in a form of an orb through a portal and came and gave mind speak messages while they were living inside of a tree, photosynthesizing, like Matthew Johnson or people of his type, starting a religion or whatever.
Well, if you devote enough time into something, it does become a religious aspect. I mean, it could.
If you're like acid.
I think some people just it gives them a lot of comfort and brings people to them, and they kind of become maybe a little popular when they never felt that, or so I think a lot of people, it gravitates a lot of people towards it, and then you can have a lot of fibbing and exaggerate, just straight up lying. I mean, they're I caught one guy just straight up using his sweater arm as a Bigfoot charged him and stuff. It was ridiculous. I had to call him out. It was just too ridiculous. I couldn't let that just start being passed around. It was.
People get something of a social fulfillment. A lot of people just want friends, and it's great for that. I could travel all across the country just by Bigfoot connections. Let's see who's in this town, and say, hey, let's go squatching. You want to get a beer and talk about Bigfoot? I could probably hip hop through the whole continent that way,
You probably could, yeah.
some of those people probably want to kill me, though. So I don't know. Oh my god!
Well, it's a
He's that
community,
guy.
and not everyone likes everyone else, and everyone does their own thing. And I don't know. Some of the stuff that the woo people get, it seems crazy and out there, but there's some evidence of that. People are getting orbs or lights in the sky. I mean, I posted a video of a light in the sky myself. I mean, I don't know what
those things. They occur, but who's to say that they come from a Bigfoot connection?
Right, right.
Exactly. You might as well say, well, it happens when Bigfoot are around, right? They say, so, well, you could also say it happens when rocks and trees are around. So they must be coming from the rock. The rock is actually conscious. It's an alien being from outer space, and it's sending out these orbs, right? Like, why say it's Bigfoot?
Never know. I get that.
You hear a weird sound in the woods at night. It could be anything. It could be, baby Godzilla, Mothra, the purple people eater, whatever, right? Like, we don't know unless we can confirm what it is. So it could just as easily be Mothman,
well,
any of these.
I think there's a lot of creatures out there, cryptid creatures out there, and you've studied history and myth legends of everywhere you went. And what's your opinion on all these different creatures? From ancient times and right now they're cryptids. What do you think? They're
great for campfire stories.
They think they were real, are real, still living. No,
I mean, like, probably not literally. I think they're mythic projections of the human psyche. So, like, maybe they're based on real things, like Mothman. It's very spooky. The whole area out there is spooky, and you see these weird things in the trees with glowing red eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you just maybe you're sitting there with your friends telling like campfire stories before that. You probably remember when you were a kid, you get really freaked out after a while, after these grown-ups tell you a bunch of weird stories about guys with missing arms and stuff. Like,
right.
And the scary snipe creature that you have to go hunting for. Yeah. And then eventually anything that happens, you could be impressed by it in a way that is totally seemingly mystical. Like Mothman was probably just an owl, and there were also these big giant cranes known to be inhabiting that same marshy area out there. So, I mean, what happened? Probably just like a combination of these things, like owls, glowing red eyes, owls that swoop over the car in the night, like you've seen that before.
Right.
I guess they might be chasing after something that's flying through the air that they want to eat,
My only thing would be, what about that famous picture of it on the bridge before the bridge collapsed? That's the whole, Mothman prophecy. It brings bad luck or impending disaster.
I've never understood that whole connection.
Well, it was on the bridge, and the bridge, collapsed.
Of the Mothman on the bridge. Like, are you serious?
That's the famous picture. I mean,
these are those kind of things that, like, they always crop up. There's like some tiny little form that looks like it could be a Bigfoot in the background of something, and people just say, "Well, that explains it," or like that Russian Yeti show. Remember that they came on with the Dyatlov Pass thing, and they had a picture of one of the crew members there from the expedition, who was photographed, and it was blurry and kind of at the edge of the woods, and they actually tried to suggest that it was the Yeti, and it was this like one of the last photos on the camera roll, so it must have been like right before they got attacked. This vicious Yeti came and ripped them all to pieces and tore off their tongues and faces and stuff. No, it couldn't have been like scavengers and hypothermia.
Well, I think it was a Bigfoot, and what do you think happened to him? It's pretty. What else would have done that? The Russian government did investigate the Native Americans around there, and they found them to not be at fault.
Those indigenous people that live around there? I mean, I don't know,
Yeah.
like their cultural background might have these kind of monsters in it, like everybody's does, right? Ours does, theirs does.
They definitely
But
do. They
it's not
called it the Mountain
necessarily
of the
the
Dead
same thing.
because of
Yeah.
the natives of there wouldn't go there. It was inhabited by Sasquatch ghosts and a few other things. But
Are you sure that it was called the Mountain of the Dead before those people died there,
uh,
though?
I know that the natives of that place, it was a very superstitious place.
Yeah, well, just like Bluff Creek, like they're part of the background of the whole Bigfoot legend around here is this taboo about certain areas, like the upper headwaters of Bluff Creek were known by local natives to be haunted or the realm of the mountain people, or like they're just
Yes.
spirits.
Yes.
Like there's mountains here that are like considered evil mountains, and how is that possible for, like, I don't know, the white man to understand? Like the European culture just doesn't have that much going on in that regard. Evil mountains.
No.
I guess we can go all the way to the most like Middle Earth mystical origins, but yeah, it's taboo. And I'm looking at these Mothman on the bridge pictures, and they look totally fake. Don't you think?
They came, I mean, right that day of, and well, what kind of animal do you think would be perched up on the side of this the bridge like that? I mean, it's not
It's
like it's on
been a
top
while
of
since
it, but it's
it's been a while
it's
since
like
I've
on the
seen
side of
it.
it, so
It's really hard to tell that it
good.
is an animal.
It's good size, I would say. It's been a while since I looked at it myself, but from what I remember, it
But
was pretty good size.
it's a picture. It's a picture of that bridge, but it's not collapsed yet. Who knows? Like, when was this picture taken?
It
But
was. I have a couple hours, or I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've
okay, well,
investigated
after this,
Mothman.
I'll look into this when it's not on live on the air. But
Yeah,
yeah, I just think that the Mothman it's a kind of a weird report that led to more weird reports, and then you had this bridge fall down. What I don't know how long it took before the bridge fell down, months or a year or two. I don't remember. But like, how can you even draw the line between these weird reports and then the bridge falling down? I mean, you could just easily say, well, the milk went bad in the refrigerator at the grocery store and in Point Pleasant, and it was because of the Mothman.
right, right. No, I get that. And
You could draw
a
lines
lot of things
all
did
over the
happen
place.
like that. They did chalk it up
Like,
to the
yeah,
Mothman.
if you
And
have a selective attention, you can do it. You can draw a
right,
line between anything and say there's causation there. But I mean, like,
yeah,
one of the logical principles, correlation is not necessarily imply causation. So, I mean, just because there's
right.
two events, that one is related to the other or causing the other. And this Mothman
Right.
thing, who knows what it is? Because I'm seeing fake things that look completely fake. And
There's a
they're
lot,
just
yeah. There's a lot of it, but I think that photo is the original, and to my knowledge, really the only one out there. It's
well,
been a
there's
while,
like
but
there's one thing on the edge of the bridge there
yeah,
that looks like it's part of the construction of the bridge, these rails along the top, and then it seems to have something sitting in it, like God knows what that is. It could be like a bird's nest or a piece of junk, trash that
I
blew in
guess
the
the people
wind.
who were there testify that's the Mothman. That's not anything else. And
Did somebody see it flying?
yeah, they were witnesses. They all see it on the bridge. It was on the bridge for I'm gonna get it wrong,
Well,
but for enough for the picture to get taken, and there was
okay,
witnesses,
maybe.
and
I
it's real
really wish there
famous.
were more than more than one picture. This
Right.
is just like with Bigfoot. The same kind of crap happens. Like you got one free photo and then a story that goes with it. That somebody told that could be a total tall tale for all you know, right?
Yeah,
What we want is better
it's really easy to do that
evidence.
actually. You can people do, and people do that. They just take pictures of just the woods, and then they start zooming in, and cropping in, and looking, and oh, they got two eyeballs. It looks good enough, and hey, there's a Bigfoot. But that's not.
Yeah,
I think
some of those people.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead. Oh, some of those people even think that that's how Bigfoot is. Like, Bigfoot has this magical power to only show itself, like in camera images that you see when you get home and you analyze your video frame by frame. Like, because you're not going to see it with your naked eye. It's a mystical creature, right? But the camera can capture these special moments. Like,
right. I've heard of that, but I've had
really
some weird experiences in the woods of not seeing things that were pretty close by, and my camera didn't pick it up. Though.
Well, like what kind of things have you experienced in the woods that are strange and unusual?
Other than
I won't make fun of you. I won't mock you if you want to tell them. But
I was bluff charged basically when I was 13. It wasn't a bluff charge because it didn't make an aggressive noise or anything first, but I was researching basically at night, and I was paralleling the road up to this gravel pit, and thought it was a deer, so I eventually made a low whoop and walked about 20 more steps, and it came down the embankment. It crossed the road in 3 steps like a person, and I froze, and it jumped over this branch but into the ditch. It was in water, it flooded thick, and it dashed towards me. It was and it stopped. It's like 20-30 feet away.
Were you able to see it?
No, the moon was out. I don't know if it was full moon or half moon, but it was out, and I could see the tops of the thickets move. I didn't see it, but I can tell you it walked on 2 legs. Like I said earlier, I jumped hundreds of deer at that place, especially too. It wasn't a deer. It wasn't a human. It wasn't nothing. And I tried recreating it, and it takes me 5 jumping steps to cross that road. It did it.
Oh, that's
3.
cool.
Yeah, I did it in 3, and I basically was frozen with a stick right there like this for about 2 minutes, and I walked around towards the gravel pit, and I was going to go down the road, but I thought it'd be safer to go in the brush so I could hear it coming.
So it definitely had that bluff charge quality that you see in like ape or bear, for instance, behavior.
But I didn't think it. But it didn't give no warning for, it just did it. So I don't think it was a bluff charge, but the only thing I can say.
It's pretty similar to what happened in my yard that one night, like footfalls coming down, it sounded bipedal. The earth actually vibrated. I could feel it under my feet in the concrete slab foundation of the porch, and if it wasn't something big, bipedal, upright, heavy, I don't know what else it could have been, right? But
yeah, exactly.
I heard it moving after that too, and I heard it move through the neighboring yard. It was vacant at the time, so there are no dogs or anything there, and I could hear it breathing, kind of grunting to it as it walked, and like they say, I could hear the sound was up here where my ears are, not down there where a bear would be, downhill from
right. And like you said, when you found those impressions, a bear's weight is evenly dispersed between the 4 points of contact, whereas the Bigfoot would have been just the 2. And I think you're right when you said earlier that the bear probably wouldn't have made as much of an indentation.
It was just a depression in the plants, but the footprints were long. They weren't shorter like a black bear's foot is going to be.
Right.
So it didn't appear like double stepping or anything. it appeared like steps, and there were only like 3 of them because that's the area where the plants were growing, and then it transitioned onto gravelly dirt.
Right,
so
right.
obviously that's kind of an impression there, and I didn't see any others. And then I had to leave town because my mother was in the hospice, so I didn't even get to investigate the next few days. I had to leave. My pet sitter, the cat watching lady, came over, and she didn't experience any further Bigfoot activity. but I don't claim it's a Bigfoot. I'm pretty happy with saying that was a weird experience that I had, kind of like yours. It was very intriguing and interesting and slightly scary and weird. Just especially weird. Just like, what the hell was that? Right?
Yeah. Especially when it's happening, you're kind of almost in shock and awe in real time. You're just frozen.
Yeah, it definitely hit me like that. For a long while, it kind of lingered with me. Like when I'd go back out in the woods behind my house, I really felt like there might be big feet or Bigfoots or whatever back in there.
Yeah, they're watching you.
I mean, I even found weird things, that most people would call Bigfoot evidence, like weird stick formations and twisted branches that you kind of have to wonder, how did it twist like that, more than once around? Or
right.
Of course, tons of bear tracks back there, big piles of bear scat. The weirdest thing, though, is when I found these sticks on the ground that were like seemingly obviously making a shape at the let me back up. So I pulled a bunch of yard and log debris from the edge of the yard and was pulling firewood out of there. And then I noticed at the back side of this big pile of stuff was what looked like a sort of weird arch of a branch that was like what by all appearances was a trail. So I went back there and I found there actually was a trail there. And at the entrance of that, which I don't think anybody could have gotten into because it was like in this gulch edge of the yard where the only real ledge to walk on was this trail behind the wood pile. So back in there was these sticks that were like this, one stick, and then in the middle another one. So it looked exactly like an arrow pointing that way. Like, okay, so I kept walking down in there, and it opened up, and it was obviously like an old logging road from way back in the day, and it was like a whole other world back in there. Followed it along the creek, went back in there for miles. Some really interesting, nice forest back there, and man, it felt squatty as all hell. Like once you got in there, you knew you were off private property. You were in some kind of a place where very few people ever bothered to walk anymore. I mean, since they logged it or whatever. And, so we were back in there hiking and looking around, and there were lots of weird things that happened, just like this weird thump that you could feel in the ground coming from up in the hill. Like, what was that? And my friend Rip Lytle, he's an old time Bigfoot hunter. He says, yeah, well, that's what they do, man. They like make that thump. It's almost like subsonic or something. But, I don't know. I never saw Bigfoot back there, but plenty of stuff that you could claim as Bigfoot evidence,
Well, what's your thoughts on those tree structures, as people say, the ones that you've seen? What do you think made it? If it wasn't Bigfoot, isn't that the most logical thing?
Okay. Yeah.
Especially in your area?
Like I said, there could be a very creative purple people eater monster back there doing that.
It could be, yes.
Like I believed in gargoyles and the slee stack and all kinds of stuff. So maybe it's them doing it. I don't know. But
or little people.
I would, if I found a structure back there, I might think it could be from the pot grower trimmer types who camp out in the summer. Maybe the the traveling homeless kids. And
for what purpose,
people,
though?
Well, they can hike back behind my cabin by going up the creek, from the hardware store. There's a little entrance there. You go up that canyon, and you'll be going back along the side of my house down in the gulch. And like, I did hear like howls from in there that I thought, dang, that sounds like a Bigfoot, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then I could hear someone banging on a pan or something like that. So obviously there was somebody who hiked a mile back, and was camping in there.
Right.
Another night, some people were howling off the other ridge, and I thought, dang, what the heck is that? It sounds just like Bobo. And then I started hearing other sounds like music playing and some drum or something. And it's got to be like a party at the pot grow back there. And like, so then I thought back to myself, well, wait a minute, what night is it? It's the same night that Finding Bigfoot was on. And so probably they were watching the Finding Bigfoot episode up there and decided to go out on the porch and howl a few times.
Right. I mean, plus it's a famous place, so I'm sure you get that a lot, actually, of people going out there researching and making noise. And so.
Yeah, but the stick structure stuff, I think almost all of it is either fabricated by people. I mean, pretty clearly, like you can see the sawn off ends of the sticks or whatever. You can see twine twisted. Like in the beginning of that Marble Mountain Bigfoot video, the famous one, you can see the structure as there's twine, orange, plastic twine, and also sawn off ends. So it's very unlikely that a Bigfoot made
structure. It's the basic survival structure archetype. I mean, it's just
anything that looks like survival man might have gone in there. It's probably not for a Bigfoot. Like if you're talking shelters, well, Bigfoot.
Well, I know only of
to be big, so you need a big house for the Bigfoot to live in.
Well,
not a tiny little thing.
I must say I know a guy from up north, Bill Sowers. He found a structure like that, except for it's massive with some massive logs actually that humans can't pick up and put into place.
Yeah, you mean like those big trees that form like X's and
no, this was it was actually in the form of like an actual shelter, like a survivor shelter, but it was with big logs, and the root balls still had dirt and stuff attached to it, and it couldn't have been placed there by a person. So
well, like there you go. It's worth noting those things as a researcher. You want to know everything that's in your research area, your local environment, preferably, like where you live,
right,
or around it, right? Become the most familiar with it, and like noting all the different things that something changes, something is unusual. Well, it's good to take note of it. Maybe that will come in handy later on. Like
yes,
maybe it'll become part of a proof for Bigfoot being there, or maybe it'll be part of a proof for a tribe of leprechauns who's doing this.
Hey, either on camera is gonna be some good evidence of something.
Or maybe you'll see like the Cub Scout troop come out there and make a hut, like they did in Boy Scouts. So when we went on camping trips, we built huts.
Yeah. All right, we're almost at the end of the hour. Real quick, I would like to. How do people get reach some content? Don't you have what's your Facebook page group?
Yeah, we didn't really get to talk about Bluff Creek Project much.
It's all right. I can have you on again sometime, and we'll cover that.
Okay. Well, the Bluff Creek Project, just briefly, is a trail camera project now. Publicly funded, transparent data. You can watch our highlight videos on Facebook. We have a fan page that's just Bluff Creek Project, or on YouTube. It's all one word, Bluff Creek Project on YouTube. We have some pretty awesome things with mountain lions, endangered Humboldt martins and stuff like that. But since 2012, no Bigfoot yet. I don't know. We have actually have cameras on the film site where Patterson film was shot and around there in that area.
Wow.
And so, there's also a blog for Bluff Creek Project.blogspot.com. And these are all interlinked. So if you want to become part of the project or donate to it or just see what we're up to or learn more or get directions to the film site area, that's all on there. And my own blog is bigfootbooksblog.blogspot.com. A lot of research on there dealing with the film site location and how we rediscovered it after it had been basically lost to everybody's awareness that we ever could find. Publicly lost. We couldn't find anybody who could point to the actual big tree and things that are in the film,
Right. That's awesome.
So we found that, and that's a whole long saga. We have like 80 videos of it on YouTube and endless, almost overdone. Like Tom Yamarone said, it's like European cinema. But so there's that, and then the final thing, the Coalition for Critical Thinking Bigfoot Research. That's a Facebook group that I and some other people run. That's kind of loosely affiliated with our Creek group. But go up there if you want to talk about Bigfoot every day and maybe learn about skeptical approaches to mysterious topics. We don't deny the possibility of these things, but we do hold them to a high level of scrutiny. If it has to pass muster, right, with science, it's going to have to pass a group with skeptical people who are amateurs.
Right.
We're looking into these things too. So if you can't get it past us, you're very unlikely going to be able to convince anybody in the academia or science that it's true.
Right.
And if you're trying to prove Bigfoot,
you guys definitely do have that standard.
The evidence has to be what carries it, not your ego and not your feelings and not how inspired it made you feel or how special you might feel or how angry you might feel when somebody criticizes it and how much it might hurt when someone calls you a crazy nutcase. When you're not crazy, you might have just experienced a weird thing like seeing a Bigfoot. People say they've seen it. How many people can say they've seen it and have no reason to see such a thing? It really, really makes me wonder, why are people still seeing it? If it's fake, you got a lot of explaining to do.
There's too many people who have seen it, too many stories that sound very legitimate by people who are respectable as individuals and as researchers. And so I think it's real. I know it's real. I mean, I've had my...
who am I to say to you that you're wrong? I'm not the guy to say that to you.
Right.
I might ask you 100 questions, like, could it have been a bear?
Right.
And hopefully those questions aren't going to hurt anyone's feelings because they are the essential questions we all have to ask.
They're going to be asked by scientists exactly. And I think that's good attitude to have. And so everyone check out that group, check out his the blog spots and the Olympic Bigfoot Project. Real quick, what is number one Bigfoot book you would recommend to anyone, for everyone?
Oh yeah, that's right. I run a bookstore too in Willow Creek.
Right?
Yeah, I've got several hundred Bigfoot books, but my number one Bigfoot book.
Your number one.
I can't really say. Right? There's 5. I can name 5.
What's the one you can publicly reveal?
Everyone has to read the John Green books.
Yes.
But primarily it is Sasquatch Apes Among Us. That is like the Bible, the Old Testament, of Bigfoot.
That's actually
studies.
The book I first read. I'm pretty sure it was a John Green book. I'm pretty sure it was that one.
And certainly you have to read the Jeff Meldrum Sasquatch Legend Meets Science, because even though there's flaws in it, just like any book, and some parts of it are kind of outdated now. It needs a second edition. It's still one of the very, very best, most convincing arguments for the Bigfoot possibility, and I highly recommend that book. It's very well written too. And Chris Murphy's book, either Meet the Sasquatch or Know the Sasquatch, is a superb photographic history, and it's well written too. But he is very, very good with the images. So if you ever wanted one of these historical images of like the Patterson history, you have to have that book. And his other stuff is also great. Like I always recommend people read the Roger Patterson book. Do Abominable Snowmen of America Really Exist? That's Roger's book that came out, the first real book only about Bigfoot. It predates almost all of it except for the Ivan Sanderson book, but that was all about stuff in the world at large. It's also worth reading, but it's kind of a little ridiculous to think that there's mysterious cryptid primate species everywhere. But yeah, that's Abominable Snowmen Legend Come to Life by Ivan Sanderson. It's a worthwhile read. But Roger Patterson's book is also reprinted in the cheapest way to get it is the Bigfoot Film Controversy edited by Christopher Murphy, because he puts some 80 pages on the end of it, which are very useful update to the Patterson book. And I mean, those are the main ones. Like, I guess I recommend a couple of skeptical books too. Like, any believer really should be able to withstand reading Bigfoot Exposed by David Daegling. That is a harsh denunciation, but if you want to change yourself and be able to withstand the scrutiny of others, read that book and think about it. And also the what's it called? Bigfoot by Joshua Booz. Is it Anatomy? No, not Anatomy of a Legend. I'm forgetting the subtitle. But yeah, Joshua Booz.
So much books, though. It's all right.
I don't know. It's been talking for too long here, but Buhs, Joshua Booz. That book, Legend Come to Life, I think it's called. Bigfoot Legend Come to Life. It's a skeptical social history of the whole Bigfoot phenomenon, including the early days in the Himalayas with the Yeti seekers. Yes. And it's awesome to read. If he says something in there, it's almost certainly got a footnote that says where he found that, which is something that people forget in writing Bigfoot books. They never bother to clearly find the primary sources where you can truly say, like, is this what really happened? Is this really who said this or whatever? And that's important in any field of study, to document your sources. Otherwise, there's no way anyone else can benefit in a scholarly way from what you've written. If you read those books, those are, I think, 5 or whatever. Those are very good books, pro and con.
Yeah, I think that was great, and people should check out every single one of them. Well, thank you, Stephen, for coming on. I really appreciate it. Everyone check out every book he suggested and his group, and also the blogspotradio.com for for the Bluff Creek Bigfoot Project. All right. Thanks, everyone, for...
you'll find it.
Yeah, everyone knows you. I mean, so check it out, guys, and everyone have a good night. Thank you for watching the Lost Cryptids Conservatories live show.